By the 1850s-60s, urban post offices adopted dedicated sorting systems, use of canceling machines, later in the 1870s, steel mailboxes, and improved postal bags passed by Congress and signed by President Abraham Lincoln. The Postal Act of 1863 dramatically restructured the National Mail Service. Before 1863, mail was not delivered to your door, and citizens had to go to the post office to check if they had received any letters or parcels. After 1863, in cities with populations over 20,000, mail was now delivered to your home or business free of charge. The post office employed uniformed letter carriers to make daily deliveries, a revolutionary concept at the time. The Postal Act of 1863 established a zoned rate structure based on weight of the mail piece and distance brackets. For example, 3 cents for letters up to half an ounce traveling under 3,000 miles, 10 cents for longer distances or heavier items. Postal service became central to daily American life, as carriers carried personal letters, newspapers and magazines, advertisements, books, pamphlets, and catalog orders. The massive growth of cities and industrial workforces, disruption of traditional rural, religious, family structures, and rising immigrant populations, often from Catholic, Jewish, or non-Protestant backgrounds caused Protestants to fear moral decline, blaming urban life, secularism, vice literature, birth control, and changing gender roles. These fears led to the rise of moral purity crusaders, like Anthony Comstock, who pushed for government action. Anthony Comstock, born on March 7, 1844, in New Canaan, Connecticut, Anthony Comstock was the son of Thomas Anthony Comstock and Polly and née Lockwood. His father was a prosperous farmer and sawmill owner, providing a stable, rural upbringing. His mother, a devout Congregationalist, instilled in him a strict moral code rooted in the austere, fire and brimstone faith of his childhood. Her influence was profound, shaping Comstock's lifelong commitment to combating what he perceived as moral corruption. Comstock's formal education was limited to public schooling in New Canaan and New Britain, Connecticut. There is no record of him pursuing higher education. In December 1863, amid the American Civil War, Comstock enlisted in the Union Army, serving as a private in Company H of the 17th Connecticut Infantry Regiment. During his service, he was noted for objecting to the profanity and immoral behavior of his fellow soldiers, reflecting his deep-seated commitment to personal purity and moral rectitude. After the war, in 1867, Comstock moved to New York City, where he worked variously as a porter, stock clerk, and wholesale dry goods salesman. His exposure to what he perceived as the city's rampant vice, prostitution, pornography, and the sale of obscene literature galvanized his crusade against immorality. In 1872, he became actively involved with the Young Men's Christian Association, YMCA, leveraging its platform to advance his anti-vice initiatives. Comstock's relentless activism culminated in his appointment as a special agent of the U.S. Postal Service on March 5, 1873, a position he held until January 1907. In this capacity, he was empowered to enforce laws against the mailing of obscene materials. Comstock lobbied Congress intensely, using a mix of public outrage, morality-based appeals, and support from Christian reform societies. Congress responded with sweeping legislation. Every obscene, lewd, or lascivious book, pamphlet, picture, paper, writing, print, or other publication of an indecent character is hereby declared to be non-mailable matter. Comstock Act, Section 148 of the Postal Code, 1873. That same year, he founded the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice, NYSSV, an institution dedicated to monitoring public morality and assisting law enforcement in prosecuting offenders. He was notorious for his campaigns against birth control advocates, including the arrest of prominent figures like Margaret Sanger and Emma Goldman. Comstock's zealous enforcement of anti-obscenity laws led to the destruction of vast quantities of literature and artworks, actions that were both lauded and criticized in his time. Many provisions of the Comstock criminal morality law have since been repealed or deemed unconstitutional. The growth of free delivery in cities prompted the standardization of mailboxes and mail collection boxes. 1870s, 1880s, cast iron public mail collection boxes began appearing in cities. In 1883, Congress passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. To ensure that federal government jobs were awarded based on merit and competitive exams, not political connections or campaign loyalty, as opposed to the popularized spoils system championed by President Andrew Jackson in the 1830s, the spoils system openly embraced the idea that to the victor go the spoils, meaning political winners got to fill government jobs with their allies. Jackson removed over 400 postmasters and replaced them with loyal Democrats. Postmasters were expected to support the administration's political agenda, help with re-election campaigns, distribute or suppress partisan newspapers, especially during the Civil War period when the spoils system was approved for the appointing of postmasters and generals by President Andrew Jackson. The Pendleton Act established the Civil Service Commission, which had oversight of civil service examinations, and made it illegal to force federal employees to contribute to political campaigns known as assessments. The act also gave civil servants job security and protection from partisan firings. President James A. Garfield's assassination by Charles J. Gutierrez, a disgruntled office seeker who believed he was owed a job for his political loyalty, galvanized support for the passing of the Pendleton Act. By the 1890s, residential mailboxes became more common, and more regulations slowly emerged. In 1896, Rural Free Delivery, RFD, launched, after years of lobbying from farmers' organizations, rural newspapers, and progressive politicians. The Post Office Department began experimenting with free mail delivery to rural homes. October 1, 1896, first official RFD routes opened in West Virginia, with 3 carriers on horseback. Over the next 2 decades, thousands of routes were added across the country, connected isolated communities to national news, commerce, and political life. RFD allowed farmers to receive newspapers, catalogs, seeds, tools, and personal letters at home, increased voter awareness and turnout in rural areas, and fostered the growth of mail-order businesses like Sears and Montgomery Ward. Before 1913, the post office did not handle packages over 4 pounds. That was left to private express companies who often charged high fees, especially to rural areas. By the early 20th century, official guidelines for mailbox size and placement would be fully codified. The Postal Act of 1912, effective in 1913, created parcel post, allowing shipment of packages up to 11 pounds, later increased, delivery to every address, including rural and remote areas. Americans quickly embraced parcel post, using it to ship chickens, ducks, and other live animals, legal with proper packaging, eggs, butter, produce, and perishables, often packed in sawdust or straw. Merchandise from catalogs, even, briefly, children from 1913 until 1915, most famously, Mae Piersdorf, age 5, mailed from Grangeville to Lewiston, Idaho, with stamps on her coat, riding with a railway mail clerk, cost 53 cents. This loophole was quickly closed. Parcel post boosted rural economies, allowed small businesses to reach national markets, and undercut private carriers, increasing public support for the post office.